Hey everybody, I'd like to discuss a topic this week that I think that everybody deals with on a regular basis. And it's a little thing, but to me, it is a root cause of many, many problems, and that's housekeeping. I think we're all familiar with the term housekeeping, and ultimately it means stuff that is laying around and it doesn't belong there. It could be refuse, it could be garbage, it could be materials, it could be anything. And I know that in the past, I've had experience with organizations who follow what was termed as Japanese manufacturing philosophy, Kanban, lean. And it was really interesting to me because first of all, when you walk into these places, you could literally eat off the floor. It was so clean. But secondly, nothing was ever out of place. Everything had a place. And then when it wasn't being used, it was in its place. And the efficiency gained from that was unbelievable. Secondly, usually they employed some form of just-in-time inventory, meaning that if they're building 5 units today, then they have inventory of 5 parts for those 5 units. And then the next day, so just-in-time inventory means basically they don't have an excess of inventory laying around waiting for manufacturing to be performed or whatever it might be, in construction. But ultimately, when we look at housekeeping, I think there are a lot of reasons that it makes a lot of sense. And when I say makes a lot of sense, it makes a lot of sense to address it and make it a priority. Number one, and I think we all know this, poor housekeeping creates hazards. You got cords everywhere, you've got garbage on the ground, you've got things where they don't belong. And really, it creates hazards. Hazards such as slips, trips, and falls are probably number one when I'm walking around. It's always the first thing I notice. Housekeeping. Bad housekeeping usually is a good indication to me I'm going to run into and see a lot of other hazards and unsafe behaviors. When I see really good housekeeping, I tend to see somewhat of a culture of less hazards. Let's just put it that way. I think another thing that we have to be thinking about is poor housekeeping can really increase the hazards of cuts and punctures and different struck by injuries. Things laying around, boards with nails sticking out of them, sharp metal hanging out of the side of a scrap bin, whatever it might be. These are unnecessary hazards. I think housekeeping oftentimes can create a fire risk or even an emergency risk. I've seen stuff blocking emergency exits and doorways, and that creates a barrier to being able to get out in a hurry. And again, that fire hazard piece, when you leave a bunch of debris around that doesn't need to be there, then you are creating a hazard by doing so, especially when there are solutions that we can employ that eliminate that. And I think the other big thing, and this kind of starts leading in to another reason that I think housekeeping is so critically important, is that poor housekeeping impedes equipment and workflow. It creates efficiency issues. And I can remember back as a specific example when I worked as a union laborer, I remember I was working on a road project where we were repairing the expansion joints and freeway overpasses. And we had a lot of, materials and debris that would come out of the work. And a good example of that was in order to access the bridge decks, we had to put temporary walkways and guardrails on the outside over traffic below. And when we stripped all of that, all the braces and all of the decking and everything, we would stack it up on the bridge deck. And then I remember that it would be in the way. It would impede that workflow. It would impede traffic. So we'd have to pick it up and put it on a truck, and then it would get moved somewhere. And we would basically pile it up where we moved it. And then we would have to go back later and we would have to pick it up again. We have to move it somewhere else. And ultimately, I remember touching the same debris, the same materials 4, 5, 6, even 7 times when they could have been moved one time and put where they belonged instead of just getting them out of the way constantly. So, really the amount of efficiency we gain through good housekeeping is unbelievable. Just do it right the first time. Have the materials there, have the bins there. Stuff should go right into garbage cans. Materials should go right into some form of a storage unit, a skip box or something that can can be used to contain these things, and then it can be picked up by a forklift and moved. But think about the opportunities for efficiency by having clean housekeeping and planning the work. And I think usually poor housekeeping is a really good indication of poor planning and poor overlap of different companies and contractors working in the same little area. So um, just something to think about. And I think that kind of the rules of thumb are clean as you go. But even before that, have a plan and a rule as far as what is to be done with debris and materials when they're finished being used or the result of doing work and having some garbage, having something you can't use that needs to be thrown away or recycled. But once you have that system and that policy in place, and you have the tools, the garbage cans, the skip boxes, whatever it may be able to put this stuff somewhere where it belongs, maybe rolling racks like the pipe fitters use and the electricians. But then after that, clean as you go. Make sure that people know that things can only go to designated disposal areas. They can't leave them laying around. They certainly can't just throw their coffee cups and their debris from their lunches on the ground. That is totally unacceptable, and you see it all the time. Um, Make sure materials are stacked and stored properly. Again, a perfect example would be a rolling rack for conduit and pipe for either the pipe fitters or the electricians. I love to see those things because they have everything on a rolling cart and they use what they need and everything goes right back on the cart and they can roll it to the next place. And I think, what's really important is we need to teach people to look out for other people. Remind each other, hey, man, that needs to go in the garbage can, or hey, you need to clean this mess up before you go. Maybe make sure to plan your work ahead so the last 20 minutes of the day, you get your cleanup done and you don't get whistle bit where you're out of time and you need to be gone and you don't have time to clean up after yourself. And always finish the day right. I think that is key is make sure our people know that the last 15, 20 minutes of the day, half hour of the day, whatever it is, clean up. Make sure you're ready for the next day. Get all your stuff in order. Lock up all your tools. And I think that by building that culture, and I've seen it, a good example would be I worked with a superintendent for Mortensen years ago named Lyle. And Lyle had a project where I've actually seen him do a presentation on what they did on this project, but they built a system that was really quite phenomenal, and the efficiency they gained out of it was absolutely incredible from his report. So hopefully, hopefully that resonates with you. And I know that we all deal with housekeeping as a real problem, but take that with you, and we'll see you next Wednesday.